new series called I'm Not Fine. How are you? So we're going to be looking at anxiety, depression, anger, just everything that every single one of us deals with on a regular basis. And those of you who say, that's not me, you really need to be here for this. We're going to be going through the book of Lamentations. And today we're looking at anxiety. And this idea of what does it mean to be lost in anxiety and how do you come out of that? And I don't know if you've ever spoken to anybody, and as you're speaking to them, it's just subtle, where there's some of this right here. Now here's my rule. If you do this to me, because that causes a little anxiety with people, you're talking to anybody, there's instantly a reaction. But if you do it to me, I'm not going to react because you have anxiety that I have something on my nose. It's a common human rule that if somebody that you don't even know has something on their nose, you have to tell them. It's required by law. And if it's you and you get home and you're panicking, oh my word, there's been something on my nose all day. I don't even care because I realize that everyone else that have talked to me throughout the day, they wanted to say something to me and they didn't. And so they're taking it to bed with them that night that they failed. You see, anxiety can be in the smallest things like that, but can also be in these burdens that seem too heavy to carry, too much to just walk through life. It's this thing that is continually weighing you down. Last week, I shared with you, this last Wednesday, we had our construction celebration with the Oasis downtown Chandler. I invited all of you to come, and a lot of you came. But going into that event was months and months and months of anxiety, and to the idea of this is too heavy for us to carry. The burden is too much. And so on Monday, we decided let's launch this campaign to reignite our fundraising to build the Oasis. We've already started, but in typical fashion for us, we don't have enough money. And so we're like, well, let's just figure it out. So we started a campaign to raise $50,000 in 50 hours. And at the event, it was amazing. There were so many people that showed up. It was unreal to see a lot of you, but then the people from the city of Chandler and representatives and council members. And it was overwhelming. So I started my stopwatch at like 7:30, 8:30, probably 8:30 on Wednesday. And if you follow me on Instagram, you saw me annoyingly talking about our $50,000 campaign. Somebody gave us a grant and said, make it matching. And if you raise the funds, then you'll have $100,000. So we launched this campaign. And so as of Friday night, we actually raised $157,057. From 131 different donors. So we stepped into that with massive anxiety, but we saw through that, you know what, we're not alone. And so often that's how anxiety feels like. It feels like you are the only one dealing with this. You are the only one sitting in it. You're the only one wrestling through whatever that anxiety issue is. Like 12 or 13 years ago, I gave a sermon when we were in the old worship house. It's where our gym is today. And if you go off the back corner of the room, Palmer's office and my office are right there in kind of the corner of the offices. And after every single service, generally, we go in the back room and we talk about, okay, what should we change? Is there anything we need to do differently? And so Palmer and I are in the back room right next to the worship house room. And Palmer looks at me, he goes, that was a great sermon, but you did it backwards. I'm like, I don't know if you can do a sermon backwards and it still be a great sermon. So, what? He says, your first point, that should have been your last point. You should have ended with that. And your last point, that's what you needed to started with. The middle one, that's fine. And I said, so what do you want me to do? I don't know, figure it out. Like if it was me, I would do it the other way, but good luck with your life. So I go into my office and I start looking at on my computer. I'm like, okay, how can I change this? Do I just cut and paste and like flip-flop it? And I'm wrestling through, what do I do here? And the music starts and I can hear the service is starting and then somebody does the announcements and I realize it's getting close to me to go stand on stage. So I grabbed my 2 sheets of paper and I was like, well, so I walk up on stage and I go to the podium and I took my pieces of paper and I put them down there and I just kind of stared at it for a second and looked up and went like, well, And so I started preaching from the bottom of the second page. And I just preached in reverse. Like dyslexia does come in handy sometimes. And I got done with that. And you want to talk about anxiety. Like it was like one of those moments where I walked off the stage and then passed out for several days. You see, I always emulated what others around me did as speakers. And I would look at Palmer's notes and other people's notes, and they have brilliant minds. And so they would have point 1, slide 2, slide 3, point 2, and they would have a key idea and all these things. And then I would just have gibberish on sticky notes all over my office and scribbles on the wall and like things in my pocket. Like literally, like there's always, here's some notes right in between, like 3 minutes before I went on stage. And I realized that's bringing me anxiety trying to be like them. And what anxiety does is it's because something in your life isn't right. And I had to get to a place where I was like, I just need to be me. You see, often, and in fact, most of our pastors have their Masters of Divinities or Masters of Theology or PhDs. I have my Masters in the hard knocks of life. I just kind of stumbled and fell upon the stage one day. And so I was looking at who am I and how does my mind think. And so these are the notes that I'm looking at right now. And I had to get to a point, like I look at that and I'm like, I don't understand, that makes complete sense. So bringing it into our guy that runs the slides, this is what I give him. He gets that. You see the red line? You just follow that. It's logic. Follow the red line, and the blue circles are where he needs to hit slide. I don't understand why that's so confusing. And every single time I preach, it's different. It's just wherever I start drawing. So that was a sermon I did on your circle and who you surround yourself with. This is a circle on leaders are leaders with vision. You need to be a visionary leader. This is a sermon I did on, who knows? Something, but it was pretty good, I think. So every single time there's a process that I go through that helps me stand here. And instead of trying to be someone else, I had to wrestle through the anxiety of how God made me me. That's not normal. I recognize that and understand it. But I can find comfort and peace. And I can also stand here and see the pictures in my head and the drawings and the diagrams, and it's helped me wrestle through a process. Because for me, the anxiety oftentimes is I'm trying to say something I need to say. In reality, I'm wrestling through what are the things that I need to learn through this. Like, it's great that I get to share with you, but more often than not, I'm speaking to myself. So last week, we looked at what it means to be a problem solver and these issues of going out as a leader and how do you help people walk through life. And we looked at these 3 issues of looking deeper, feeling it, and stepping into it. How we look deeper into a problem. When we look deeper into a problem, we begin to feel it more, and we feel it, we have to step into it and help be a part of that process of healing. And I was looking at last week's sermon and looking at anxiety, and I realized that last week's is this week's, but this week's is in reverse. I'll say that one more time. Last week's, what we looked at, of looking deeper, feeling it, and stepping into, when you deal with anxiety, we do the same thing, but in reverse. Meaning with anxiety, the first thing you do is you step into it. And as soon as you step into anxiety, you feel it, and it can be overwhelming. And as you start to feel it, eventually you have to look deeper into it. So that idea of stepping into anxiety, sometimes it's on purpose. Sometimes you do it to yourself. I lay in bed at nights, and my mind is just racing, and I take myself through rabbit trails and conversations and things that are happening the next day, and I go through the worst case scenario of a meeting that I have at 10 a.m. And I just absolutely sit there and just tear myself apart. And I've realized that I've stepped into a mess that's not even real. And yet that's just burning me up. And so I've learned to stop at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting better, and say, Paul, that's a lie. Like that's not even true. That anxiety that you've just put upon yourself isn't even a reality. And then there are anxieties that feel like they just come out of nowhere, and it's beyond a wave. It's a block wall that just falls on top of you. I used to make bread, sourdough bread, not mediocre sourdough bread. I'm talking like the best sourdough bread in the world. Well, not the world, but close. And I used to do this a lot, and I was doing 30 loaves a day. And then people started buying my bread, and people started asking for my bread, and I realized people want this bread, so I quit because I didn't want people to want that for some reason. But right before, my wife told me, she said, hey, there's a family, they're having a party tonight. They want you to bring 4 loaves of bread for their party. I said, great. I make the loaves of bread. I'm wearing shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt. I go over to the house, and I get to the house, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a really nice house. Carry my bags of bread, and I knock on the door, and I'm like, wow, this is a really nice door. And she answers, and I said, wow, that's a really nice dress. And I look behind her, and I'm like, wow, everyone's dressed up in suits, and they're formal. And then I said to myself, run. Just run. Because for me, like, I stand on stage, and I come across oftentimes as an extrovert. But I'm as introverted as they come. Like, the greatest party I can think of is throw me in the woods for a month and let no people come near me. And in that situation, I just instantly panicked because I didn't know them. I didn't know the people. I was underdressed. Everything was wrong. And so I kind of took the bread and threw it at her and said, here's your bread. She's like, no, Paul, come in. I'm like, no. She's like, Paul, come in, meet people. And so she's walking me in the room, and I'm literally like it's like I think I'm walking, but it was like I was paranoid. I have never been so scared in my life. Like, I've climbed mountains and cliffs and done rappelling and you name it. I've jumped out of airplanes. That was the scariest moment I've ever lived through in my life. She brings me in the kitchen, and literally people are coming talking to me, and all of a sudden the sweats start, and I just feel myself going moist. And I begin thinking, just run, Paul, just run. And then I started to just mumble, and my mouth dried out. And then I literally got to the point where I'm gonna pass out. Like, I'm gonna fall over and pass out. And so I just looked at her, I said, I hope you enjoy the bread, I gotta go. And I ran, I jumped in my car, turned the music off, and I just was like, it was like nothing I've ever experienced. I got home, my wife said, how'd it go? And I said, you didn't tell me they'd be dressed up, and there'd be people everywhere. She kind of looked at me and paused, and she thought, what in the world did I marry? I literally ran upstairs, sat in my bed, pulled the covers up, and just went white. And I was in there, I'm not kidding you, for 2 hours. Just sheer anxiety attack. You see, anxiety makes no sense. We'll process and tear ourselves apart. And others will look at us and go, you just delivered bread. Like, what's wrong with you? And then I turn and look at you and say, so many things. There's a book called My Name is Hope by John Mark Comer. And I really don't care if you don't listen to another word that I say. If you go on Amazon right now, download it and read. You literally just sit through the rest of the service and read his book. It's one of the best books I've read on anxiety, depression, and just going through life. And he says in here, he says, what is anxiety? Number one, it's a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Number two, a nervous disorder characterized by a state of excessive uneasiness and apprehension, typically with compulsive behavior and or panic attacks or delivering bread. Anxiety is when fear takes over your mind. Anxiety is when fear moves from the tangible to the hypothetical. Anxiety is when the what-ifs of life suffocate your brain. Anxiety is when you can't fall asleep at night, when you can't relax and take a nap, when your mind won't turn off. Anxiety is when the imagination runs haywire with no boundaries or limits. Anxiety is when your chest is tight, your breathing shallow, your head dizzy. Anxiety is when your lungs speed up to a frenetic pace and your heart screams through your skin. Anxiety is mental. It takes place in the realm of the mind. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25, it says, anxiety weighs down the heart. You see, the ancient Hebrew word for heart was the word leb, L-E-B. And what that meant was an inner part, your thoughts or your consciousness. And so what we say that anxiety weighs down your heart, what they meant was your mind and your heart are all one. And your inner self is just heavy. When fear creeps in, when worry creeps in, when struggle creeps in, when apprehension, when all of those things that just hold you back come to the surface, and yet no one around you is even aware. You see, last week, as we looked at Nehemiah, he's filled with anxiety because he's heard what happened to his homeland, what happened to Jerusalem, what happened to the walls, what was still going on there at that time. But if you take a step back, we're going to be looking at Lamentations. If you look at Lamentations, it's written about 70 years beforehand, and it's written by a guy named Jeremiah, who was known as the weeping prophet. They said his life was filled with depression and anxiety and struggle and sorrow because he had actually lived through the destruction of Jerusalem. So he's watching his home get destroyed. And so Lamentation is this prequel, in a sense, to Nehemiah. And he was a poet, and so when he's writing this, he's writing poet, and it's an imagery of not only what has literally happened, but what's also happening to his people. And he writes, he says, how lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow has she become, she who was great among the nations, she who was a princess among the provinces has become a slave. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. Her foes have become the head. Her enemies prosper. Isn't that how anxiety feels oftentimes? Weeping bitterly. Your enemies have just become right there front and center. There's no one to comfort. John Mark Comer says, whatever you are going through, you are not alone. Others share your pain. Other godly people of faith, from Moses to Mother Teresa, know what it is like to deal with anxiety and depression. You see, when you step into it, the first thing you have to realize is that you're not alone. You're not the only person dealing with this, living in it, experiencing it. It is not just you. He writes in this book about how for years he struggled with severe depression and anxiety. He said, I started reading scriptures. He goes, I went from like 10 to 15 minutes a day to about a half hour a day. And then I went to about an hour a day. He says, now I'm about 2 to 3 hours a day I'm spending reading my Bible. And your response is, well, he's a pastor. He has time for that. And my response is, well, you have a TV. You have time for that. You see, it's a choice that we make. And one of the things he talked about is when you spend time in scriptures, you see that the stories are written about people just like you and me. You're struggling with just absolute suffering and pain. Read through the book of Job. You're struggling with sadness. You read about Hannah and the things that she lived through. Elijah was known as one of the greatest prophets to live. And yet he writes, he says, I am afraid, I've had enough. And then it says he ran for his life. See, Elijah had this amazing moment where God just absolutely showed up. And then minutes later, he begins to panic and is filled with anxiety and he runs. Instead, he ran for days until he got to the point where he sat down next to a tree and he said, God, I pray that you just take my life. You see, anxiety does that. Where there's this extreme joy and success, and then all of a sudden there's just this heaviness that just weighs us down. We read about David. David was this amazing warrior and king and leader. And yet he was filled with extreme sorrow and sadness. In Psalms 13, he says, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemies triumph over me? You see, with anxiety, you step into it. And when you step into it, you realize that you're not alone. And at that point, you begin to feel it. Anxiety, like I said, comes in quickly in all forms, shapes, sizes, strengths. Now you have a choice. Are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to deal with it? It's so much easier to ignore it, or just look at part of it, or just bring a little bit of it to the surface. In Lamentations, he goes on and he's talking about how it's not just feeling of it. He says, Jerusalem, who out-sinned the whole world, that's a significant feat, is an outcast. All who admired her despise her now, that they see beneath the surface. Miserably she groans and turns away in shame. She played fast and loose with life. She never considered tomorrow, and now she crashed royally. And with no one to hold her hand. Look at my pain, oh God, and how the enemy cruelly struts. Despise her now that they see beneath the surface. How often do we go through life just trying to hide what is right beneath the surface? Because right beneath the surface, I feel miserable, groaning, turning away in shame. You see, with anxiety, if you don't deal with it, it will continually haunt you and pursue you, and it becomes so real that it just seeps through your pores. It can't be ignored. You see, when you feel it, you realize you have to dig up the roots of anxiety. I'll be honest with you. I stole a tree once. I mean, it wasn't from like a nursery or somebody's house, but it was a big tree. It was significantly large. There was a windstorm, and this wasn't recently, and so don't judge me. Actually, I don't care. You can judge me. But I was driving, and I saw that they were cutting up the trees that had just blown over. And I saw there was this beautiful, huge tree that had blown over. And so I pulled over, and I tried to pick it up. And I couldn't even move it. And it was too big for my car, so I went and got my trailer. So there was premeditated thought. And then I went and got a friend to come and help me start digging. And so we start digging up this giant tree. And I know I've got to get the roots in order for this thing to survive. And so we're digging, and it was big. And I realized I can't get all of it. So I just started cutting off the roots that I didn't think they mattered. And we hoisted this tree on our shoulder and carried it and threw it on my trailer. And I brought it home, and I planted it in my backyard. And it looked amazing. I just skipped like 15 years of growing time. Like, this was one of the greatest capers of my life. And every day I'd get up and I'd look out my kitchen window and I'd look at my tree, and just filled with pride. It still makes me happy. And then the leaves started to fall off, and a couple of them turned brown, and I thought, no. So I went and bought some tree fertilizer, and I began to fertilize the tree, and I watered it, and I even hugged it and placed my hand on it. And I did this for weeks, and I watched that tree slowly die. And I left it and watered it for a year with hopes that it would come back. And it never did. You see, it's like that with life. We're like, I'm dealing with a lot of these issues, but I'm going to ignore this part, or I'm going to cut off that and not let anybody see it, or I'm going to replant myself and pretend like I'm a new person, and yet I'm still dragging around all of these roots. In around October, I started to realize that I'm not healthy. Like, I wasn't the best version of Paul. I wasn't happy with who I was. And I did a great job of hiding that. And in a couple of weeks, when I was in October, my son was getting released from prison. So I'm dealing with the anxiety of what was that going to be like, a whole new life. I was still wrestling through the loss of Paul Chinchin, and just honestly, just struggling with how that happened and why that happened. I was eating a bag of chips a night, pouring cheese all over myself, basically. I apologize for the visual, but I need you to know where I was. I wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't thinking healthy. There wasn't much about me that was healthy. And sometimes Jesus speaks to you in the most unique ways. So I'm watching this TV show called Limitless on Disney Plus with Chris Hemsworth, Thor. He looks okay. And he's talking about his life struggles with anxiety and longevity. And I'm like, you shouldn't even be allowed to talk about this subject. And yet then I realize that's exactly what we do. My anxiety is worse than your anxiety. Look what you look like. You should be perfect. Sometimes those that are most perfect are hiding the most pain. And so I'm watching this show, and he talks about, and they show it from a scientific perspective, how anxiety just kind of tears apart your body. And then how when you put food in your body, how that has an effect positively and negatively. And then he talked about longevity and how none of us want to age, but and yet if you age and you're old, you won. Like you survived life. And he sat there and he wrestled through, and I'm not going to spoil it to you, but the ending was phenomenal on how we deal with mourning and pain and loss. He talked about how in the Polynesian culture, they mourn for 80 to 100 days, and they don't process anything except for that person. I sat there and I got done watching that, and I just realized I need to be a healthier version of Paul. And my wife came and she said to me, she says, we're raising our 5-year-old grandson. We're trying to build this thing called the Oasis. And she says, I can't do this on my own. If you die, so be it. Loving. But she says, if you die because you weren't living your best life, I will hunt you down. And she didn't say that. But she says, I'm not okay with that. She said, I need the best version of Paul. So every night I'd look at that bag of chips, throw them away. In fact, I don't even have hardly bags of chips in my house. At 7 o'clock, I would stop eating till noon the next day, 3 to 4 days a week. I started looking at the effects of cold therapy and heat therapy. I ran a little bit and biked because it didn't hurt my knees so much. I changed my eating habits. I changed the things that I was thinking, the things that I were putting in my body. And see, when we go through anxiety or pain or struggle, we want to go from here to there instantly, when in reality, it is a small baby step or choice every single day. 4.5 months later, somebody came up to me here at church and they said, Paul, you look good. Did you lose some weight? I'm like, yeah, 4.5 months ago. Thank you for noticing. And yet, often we judge people on their outward appearance when in reality, it's so important that we deal with the inside first. You see, in anxiety, you have to dig to the roots. And I realized there were so many different areas in my life that were not healthy. And that caused me to look deeper. And I had to hold on to the truth that there is healing. There is healing in all of these areas of anxiety, of pain and suffering. We tell ourselves there's no healing from this. The truth is there is healing. In Lamentations, it goes on to say in verse 18, it says, for all of this I weep. I weep buckets of tears, and not a soul within a mile around cares for my soul. My children are wasted. My enemies got his way. God has right on his side. I'm the one who did wrong. Listen, everybody, look at what I'm going through. My fair young woman, my fine young man, all herded into exile. Take a good look at the evil ways and give it to them. Give them what you gave me for my sins. Groaning in pain, body and soul. I've had all I can take. You see, when he says that at the very end, groaning in pain, the reason they were groaning in pain was because the choices that not only the individuals, but the families and the tribes and the entire country of Israel had been making. And it brought them to this place of sheer chaos. And so now they're living in exile. You see, we have the benefit of looking back at the story and understanding that there is healing. They were returned from exile. The wall was rebuilt. They did become a new nation. The Messiah did come. He did die. He did rise again. The Holy Spirit did come upon them. And all of those truths are still here today. And yet we say there is no healing. But there is. It just takes work. It takes time in scriptures. It takes time reading and understanding that there's other people like you. It takes time in prayer. It takes counseling. It takes therapy. It takes you're surrounding yourself with the right people. It takes work. But it's so worth it. In Matthew chapter 6, it says this. It says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own. And then in Philippians, the passage Josh read, said, rejoice in the Lord always. And I will say it again, rejoice. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You see, what I found is I have to find the peace in God. And I have to realize that I have to come to him with prayer and petition and say, God, I am struggling with this and that and this. Instead of just saying, God, just help me with some of these things. I've got to get on my knees and be specific and go through this with an army because I can't do it by myself. John Mark Comer says, the enemy works overtime to pull us away from God's family. He wants you alone, isolated. Living downtown Chandler and serving down there for years, I found that every single day we move a little bit deeper into relationships with the people we live with. And I see how there's just more and more healing, not only for myself, but how I and others like you can walk along people down there. On Monday nights, we have junior high kids come over from the community. There's a girl named Matilda that comes all the time. And a couple of weeks ago, we were talking just about life. And she's 15 and she's going to be 16 tomorrow. And we asked her, what did you do for your quinceañera? Which is down there as a celebration of going from a girl to a woman. It's the size of a wedding. I mean, it's crazy. And she says, I didn't have a quinceañera. We're like, why didn't you have a quinceañera? She's like, well, I've just never had a birthday party. And we're like, wait a minute, you've never had a birthday party. So not me, but our team said to her, we're going to throw you a party. We're going to throw you a sweet 16 party. We're going to buy you a big dress. We're going to get you makeup and your hair done pretty. We're going to get you big boots and a cake. And so last night till like 11:30 with really loud music right in my backyard. Like I'm literally in bed like this. Which was giving me anxiety, but then I'm like, this is a good anxiety. Because Matilda walked in. And when she walked in, like it was this moment of she's celebrated, she's seen, she's given honor. And she walked in and she just kind of looked and there was this moment of, I don't know what to do because nobody ever looks at me. And so we danced, played music. She gave a speech. Here's her speech. I just want to thank everybody. Yep. Thank you. My wife's laughing hysterically because she knows I'm spot on. Yeah. Thank you. But you saw this moment where she was lifted out of her anxiety, of her invisibleness, of her struggle of being a zero. And we said, you are the hero tonight. You see, anxiety, it's all in here. It's real, it's painful, but it's all in here. You see, when you step into it, sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's an accident. you have to know that you're not alone. When you begin to feel it, when it's welling up and you know it's there, you have to dig up the roots. Because it's never going to go away if you don't. And then as you look at your anxiety, your struggles, your pain, as you look at it, you have to know that there is healing. And the number one lie that we tell ourselves is that there is no healing. And yet it says in Scripture, rejoice. Don't worry about tomorrow. You can't have part of the Scriptures be true and the other part be a lie. So when he's saying find joy, rejoice, do not worry, those are truths that we speak into ourselves. And when I lay in bed late at night and I'm struggling and I'm anxious, I say, that is not true. I need to find joy. And it changes everything. I'd ask you to close your eyes, and I want to read Psalms 30 over you. And I want you to hold on to these words, and I want you to let them breathe into your soul. Lord, when you favored me, you made my royal mountain stand firm. But when you hid your face, I was dismayed. To you, Lord, I called to Lord, I cried for mercy. What is gained if I am silenced? If I go down to the pit, will the dust praise you? Will it proclaim your faithfulness? Hear, Lord, and be merciful to me. Lord, be my help. You turn my wailing into dancing. You remove my sackcloth and clothe me with joy, that my heart may sing your praises and not be silent. Lord, my God, I will praise you forever. I will exalt you, Lord. For you lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. Lord, my God, I called to you for help, and you helped me. You, Lord, brought me up from the realm of the dead. You spared me from going down to the pit. Sing the praises of the Lord, you, his faithful people. Praise his holy name. For his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. When I felt secure, I said, I will never be shaken.